Scientists say the teeth belong to a previously unknown species. The discovery shows that the species may have existed at the same time as some of the earliest Homo sapiens.
Every human outside Africa carries about 2% Neanderthal DNA, a genetic scar left by our ancestors' encounter 60,000 years ago. But here's the question. What if some populations carry something even older, something stranger? DNA from humans we don't even have fossils for.
There's this other genus, Australopithecus, that's also still there.
What if a single country's DNA didn't just tell us where humans came from? What if it rewrote the entire story of who we are and where we're going? Buried in the highlands of Ethiopia lies a genetic archive older than empires, older than civilizations. An archive that holds the fingerprints of vanished human species, ghost populations that left no bones, no tools, only their echoes inside living cells. From Olympic champions to ancient priests, from pandemic resistance to clues hidden in royal mummies, Ethiopian DNA has become humanity's most mysterious time capsule. Tonight, we're diving into discoveries so strange, they force scientists to rewrite timelines, redraw migration maps, and question whether our current understanding of human history is even close to complete. And before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Stone and Bone, and check the description below. Every fact, statistic, and claim we explore is backed by research and sources we've linked for you to dig deeper yourself. If you trace humanity's footsteps far enough back, all paths lead to Africa. But some of the most critical footprints are etched into the soil of Ethiopia. This rugged land isn't just a backdrop for our origins. It's the crossroad where waves of ancient humans collided, mingled, and carried their genes into the future. The oldest known Homo sapiens fossils, the Homo kibish remains, were uncovered in southern Ethiopia and dated to about 195,000 years ago. A few hundred miles north, the Herto skulls, discovered in 1997, revealed humans living in the Rift Valley some 160,000 years ago, with brain cases larger than ours today. These finds cement Ethiopia as one of the oldest continuous stages of human evolution. But Ethiopia's role goes beyond age. Geography turned it into a funnel of movement. The Great Rift Valley carved deep corridors that guided early migrations. To the north, the Blue Nile flowed into Egypt, carrying both silt and genes. To the east, the Red Sea coast offered a narrow crossing point to Arabia, one of the likeliest out-of-Africa routes. When climates shifted and the Sahara transformed into green savannas, Ethiopia became a natural meeting point for returning groups and new arrivals. Yet, while Morocco's Jebel Irhoud fossils push the earliest Homo sapiens back to around 315,000 years ago, Ethiopia holds something Morocco doesn't: continuity. Here, fossil evidence, genetic diversity, and cultural history align. Ethiopia isn't just one origin site among many. It's the thread that connects them. And remarkably, Ethiopia remained unconquered by European colonial powers. While much of Africa saw forced population displacement and genetic disruption, Ethiopia preserved ancient diversity within its borders. That genetic independence matters. When scientists compared global genomes, they found that a single Ethiopian community contained more genetic variation than all of Europe combined. Why? Because for hundreds of thousands of years, Ethiopia wasn't isolated. It was a genetic crossroads. Populations left Africa, traveled across the world, and then, astonishingly, some returned, bringing foreign DNA back with them. Traders, herders, empires, and exiles all left their mark in Ethiopia's people. Unlike anywhere else, these layers of admixture were preserved, stacked like geological strata inside living cells. This is why Ethiopia is more than a birthplace of humanity. It is a living library of human history, storing the evidence of encounters that textbooks never mention. And the story written in Ethiopian DNA only grows stranger from here. When scientists sequenced Ethiopian genomes in the past decade, They expected the usual story. Traces of Neanderthal DNA, a few hints of Denisovan ancestry, and the standard patterns seen elsewhere. Instead, they stumbled onto something that shouldn't exist. In 2019, geneticist Pontus Skoglund analyzed DNA from Ethiopian highlanders. His computer flagged a strange signal so unexpected that he reran the analysis 5 times. The result was always the same. Ethiopians carry 4 to 7% of their ancestry from an unknown archaic human population. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan. A ghost lineage that split from our ancestors more than 500,000 years ago, then somehow reappeared and interbred with modern humans in Ethiopia. The scale of this is staggering. Outside Africa, non-Africans average only about 2% Neanderthal DNA, and some Melanesians carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. But here was Ethiopia, harboring a ghost contribution that rivals or exceeds both, yet with no fossils, no tools, no cave paintings to prove this population ever existed. Their only trace is genetic fingerprints, scattered across living people, like echoes of a vanished crowd in a deserted hall. This ghost DNA isn't just a curiosity. It has shaped immunity, metabolism, and even high-altitude adaptation in Ethiopian populations. Researchers suspect some of these ancient variants may explain unusual resistance to diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. In other words, the ghosts are still protecting the living. But it's not just about mystery, it's about scale. Sarah Tishkoff's research showed that a single Ethiopian village can contain more genetic variation than all of Europe combined. Imagine that. One cluster of huts in the Rift Valley, outmatching an entire continent in diversity. That kind of variation doesn't happen by chance. It suggests repeated waves of ancient humans, some from inside Africa, others from beyond, kept converging on Ethiopia for hundreds of thousands of years. It flips the migration story. Europe and Asia preserved memories of Neanderthals and Denisovans. Ethiopia preserved the ghosts no one else remembers. A hidden chapter of human history that exists only in blood, not in bones. And the more scientists dig, the stranger it gets. Because Ethiopian DNA doesn't tell the story of a single out-of-Africa event. It tells a story of loops, populations leaving, returning, and colliding again, creating genetic mosaics that defy our tidy evolutionary timelines. The story most of us learned in school is simple. Modern humans evolved in Africa, left about 60 to 70,000 years ago, and spread across the globe. But Ethiopian DNA tells a far messier tale. Instead of a single exit, the evidence points to multiple waves of migration, not just leaving Africa, but returning. A 2015 genomic study revealed that up to 30% of modern Ethiopian DNA comes from a back migration event around 3,000 years ago, when people carrying Eurasian ancestry flowed back into the Horn of Africa. But this wasn't the first time. Genetic signals suggest earlier returns as well, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Think of Ethiopia as less of a launching pad and more of a revolving door. Populations left during favorable climates, carrying African genes to new lands. Later, some came back. Traders, herders, exiles, bringing foreign DNA with them. These weren't one-off journeys. They were cycles, loops. Archaeology matches the genetics. Stone tools at Gatamata in Ethiopia date to 280,000 years ago, and obsidian blades reveal long-distance trade networks even in prehistory. The Nile carried more than water. It ferried people and genes north toward Egypt. The Red Sea funneled travelers to Arabia, and when conditions shifted, those same routes brought people back again. What makes Ethiopia unique is that unlike other choke points, say the Sinai or the Strait of Gibraltar, its populations absorbed and retained the returning DNA. Instead of being replaced, Ethiopia became a genetic mosaic, where each wave layered onto the last. This looping history explains why modern Ethiopians carry such extraordinary diversity. It's not one lineage, but many, stacked and interwoven over millennia. Each return trip left behind not just goods and languages, but living fragments of vanished worlds. Genetics isn't the only place Ethiopia preserves impossible timelines. Language tells the same story. Most Semitic languages, Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, trace their roots to the Middle East. Yet in Ethiopia, isolated mountain communities speak Semitic tongues that evolved in Africa itself. The Garage language, for example, stands as a linguistic fossil, untouched by the Arabic expansions that reshaped much of the region. When linguists dated the arrival of Semitic languages in Ethiopia, they placed it at about 3,000 years ago. Geneticists then compared Garage DNA and found an astonishing match. Speakers carried roughly 50% Eurasian ancestry, introduced in a single massive migration at the very same time. Words and genes traveled together. A migration invisible to archaeology left its record in people's blood and speech. This timing aligns with the rise of the Aksumite Empire, one of antiquity's great powers. At its peak, Aksum controlled the incense trade, the lifeblood of rituals in Rome and India alike. Historians estimate hundreds of tons of frankincense and myrrh flowed out of Ethiopian ports each year, carried on Red Sea ships and camel caravans. Each trade route was also a genetic highway, bringing foreigners into Aksum's orbit. By the height of its power, Aksum may have ruled 1 to 2 million people, making it a true empire. But unlike Rome, which often crushed or displaced conquered peoples, Aksum absorbed them. Traders and settlers merged into Ethiopian society, leaving genetic and linguistic legacies that survive to this day. The intertwining of culture and biology in Ethiopia is so precise that you can track migrations by following both. Languages preserve the cadence of ancient voices, while DNA records their biological footprints. Together, they paint a picture of a land where heritage wasn't erased by conquest. It was layered, one wave upon another. And nowhere is this layering more dramatic than in Ethiopia's adaptations for survival, where genes evolved not in centuries, but in a geological blink of time. Ethiopia's highlands rise above 3,000 meters, where oxygen is nearly 40% thinner than at sea level. For most people, life here would mean dizziness, fatigue, and even organ failure. Yet Ethiopians thrive. Scientists once thought adapting to extreme altitude required tens of thousands of years. Tibetans, for instance, evolved changes in the EPAS1 gene over about 8,000 years, while Andean populations developed enlarged lungs and higher hemoglobin counts across 10,000 years. But Ethiopians evolved their own solution far faster. In 2017, researchers identified a rare mutation in the BHLHE41 gene that appeared just 5,000 years ago and spread through the highlands at lightning speed. Instead of thickening blood with excess red cells, Ethiopians solved the problem at the cellular level by making oxygen transfer more efficient. Evolution on fast forward. Altitude isn't their only superpower. Ethiopian DNA carries a genetic Swiss Army knife of immunities. Variants of the ApoL1 gene protect against sleeping sickness. Others defend against malaria, tuberculosis, even smallpox. In most places, such mutations come at a cost, for example, higher kidney disease risk. But in Ethiopians, paired mutations cancel out those downsides. The result is a balanced immunity unmatched anywhere else. These advantages echo into athletics. Ethiopia, a country of just over 120 million people, has produced some of the world's greatest endurance athletes. Its runners have collected more than 50 Olympic medals in long-distance events. Genetic studies show it isn't one super gene behind their dominance, but dozens of small adaptations. Oxygen processing, muscle fiber composition, energy metabolism, that only work when combined. Yet, Ethiopia's DNA doesn't only shape survival. It preserves one of history's most mysterious communities, the Beta Israel, Ethiopia's Jews. For centuries, They claimed descent from ancient Israel, but many dismissed this as legend. Genetic testing told a stranger story. Beta Israel DNA is predominantly Ethiopian, but buried within are markers tracing not to modern Jews, but to ancient Middle Eastern populations. These markers predate the Roman destruction of the Second Temple and even the Babylonian exile. In fact, they align more closely with theoretical reconstructions of ancient Israelite DNA than with any Jewish group alive today. Even more striking, Beta Israel carry a unique version of the Cohen modal haplotype, the genetic signature of Jewish priestly families. Their variant includes mutations absent elsewhere, mutations that take millennia to form. To some scholars, this suggests Beta Israel preserved a branch of Judaism older than rabbinic traditions, reaching back to temple-era practices. Cultural evidence supports this. Beta Israel rituals closely resemble descriptions from ancient texts. Sacrificial laws, purity codes, and customs abandoned elsewhere over 2,000 years ago. As anthropologist Tudor Parfit observed, their Judaism looks less like the Talmudic faith of later centuries and more like a living fossil of its earliest form. Even modern history highlights their resilience. In 1991's Operation Solomon, Israel carried out one of the largest airlifts in history, rescuing more than 14,000 Beta Israel in just 36 hours. When geneticists studied them afterward, they found something surprising. Despite centuries of isolation, Beta Israel showed less inbreeding than expected. Careful intermarriage with select Ethiopian groups, who also carried traces of ancient Middle Eastern ancestry, had kept their lineage both distinct and resilient. Together, these stories, the high-altitude adaptations, the immunity toolkit, the survival of an ancient faith, show why Ethiopia isn't just another chapter in human history. It's a genetic library, preserving both the impossible and the forgotten, written into the very cells of its people. Ethiopia's DNA doesn't just preserve the memory of hunters and ghost lineages. It runs through the veins of ancient empires. The Aksumite Empire, rising around 100 CE, became one of the great powers of its age. Controlling Red Sea trade, Aksum shipped ivory, gold, and especially frankincense across the world. Historians estimate hundreds of tons of incense left Ethiopian ports each year, destined for temples in Rome and markets in India. But these trade routes move more than goods. They move people. Genetic studies show a sweeping admixture event about 3,000 years ago, when Eurasian ancestry surged into Ethiopia. This was not conquest. It was absorption. Traders, priests, and craftsmen blended into Ethiopian society, their DNA merging into the highland mosaic. By its peak, Aksum ruled perhaps 1 to 2 million people, a population shaped as much by openness as by power. The Nile also tied Ethiopia to Egypt. When scientists examined mummies from the 18th dynasty, the line of Tutankhamun, they found markers still present in modern Ethiopians. These weren't the signatures of slaves or servants, but of the royal bloodline itself. Architecture echoes this kinship. Nubian pyramids show uncanny similarities to Aksumite obelisks, and modern Nubians are genetically closer to Ethiopians than to their Sudanese neighbors. Even civilizations that supposedly vanished left their trace in DNA. The Harla people, who built stone cities before disappearing in the 1500s, live on in the Harari population. Their genomes reveal not extinction, but transformation, absorbing Ottoman Turkish, Portuguese, and Yemeni ancestry as Ethiopia collided with the medieval world. Time and again, Ethiopia proved unique. Empires came and went, but instead of erasing identities, their genes were folded into the living fabric of the highlands. That same fabric holds the key not only to history, but to medicine. For decades, genetic research focused on European samples. When the Human Genome Project ended in 2003, scientists realized vast stretches of human diversity were missing. Sequencing Ethiopian genomes filled many of those gaps. Researchers discovered entire stretches of DNA absent from the global reference genome, genes linked to immunity, metabolism, even brain development. Some of these are life-saving. Variants in the APOL1 gene protect Ethiopians against sleeping sickness. Uniquely, paired mutations cancel out the usual side effect of kidney disease. During the COVID-19 pandemic, doctors noticed Ethiopian patients were less likely to develop severe illness. Studies pointed to ancient variants in the ACE2 receptor, the very protein the virus uses to enter cells. These mutations predate recorded history, as though Ethiopian DNA had been rehearsing for pandemics long before modern medicine. The implications are enormous. In 2019, Ethiopia launched the Ethiopian Genetic Diversity Project, aiming to sequence 100,000 genomes, the largest initiative of its kind in Africa. Early results reveal variants that could inspire new treatments for diabetes, hypertension, and infectious disease. What began as a study of ancestry may transform into breakthroughs in global health. But opportunity brings risk. Ethiopia's genetic wealth has already drawn the attention of pharmaceutical companies and foreign labs. Critics warn of biopiracy, the exploitation of African DNA without fair benefit. Ethiopia has responded with some of the strictest genetic privacy laws on the continent, walking a fine line between protecting heritage and enabling research. Ethiopia's genetic story is more than a record of the past. It is a resource for the present and a promise for the future, a living library of adaptations, immunities, and innovations that may one day save lives far beyond its borders. Ethiopian DNA doesn't just tell us about the past, it offers a glimpse of the future. For 3 millennia, this land has been a natural experiment in human diversity, blending genes from Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and even traces of vanished ghost lineages. The result isn't just survival, it's innovation. Ethiopians carry combinations of genes that don't exist anywhere else. High-altitude endurance coupled with malaria resistance. Cellular-level defenses against tuberculosis paired with protections against smallpox. Even unusual patterns in neurotransmitter genes linked to language acquisition, musical ability, and pattern recognition suggest that diversity has shaped cognition itself. Ethiopia isn't just a birthplace of humanity. It's a test case for what happens when you combine the best of every bloodline. As globalization accelerates, the world may be heading down a similar path. In the next 3,000 years, will we all become what Ethiopia already is? Genetic cosmopolitans carrying solutions from every environment, from deserts to mountains to coastlines? Or will the erosion of local diversity mean losing adaptations that took millennia to refine? The Ethiopian example suggests a paradox. Diversity can create resilience, but only if it's preserved. Ancient Ethiopia absorbed outsiders without erasing its own heritage. The question for the modern world is whether we can do the same, protecting the uniqueness of cultures and genomes while still benefiting from exchange. For medical science, the stakes are enormous. Ethiopia may already hold keys to fighting global killers like malaria, COVID, and diabetes. But unlocking that potential requires both respect and responsibility. DNA isn't just data. It's identity, history, and power. Ethiopia shows us what humanity is capable of when barriers fall and genes mix. It's a reminder that our future survival may depend on what we've been carrying all along, hidden in our cells, waiting to be understood. From Lucy's fossilized bones to modern marathoners, from the Beta Israel to the royal mummies of Egypt, Ethiopian DNA preserves every chapter of humanity's story, not as ruins, but as living people, ghost populations, impossible combinations, immunities that shouldn't exist, but do. And maybe the greatest question isn't what Ethiopian DNA tells us about the past. It's what it tells us about the future. If one nation's people can carry the fingerprints of 3 continents, dozens of vanished migrations, and solutions to diseases we haven't even faced yet, what could the next 3,000 years bring for all of us? If you've enjoyed this journey, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Stone and Bone for more deep dives into the mysteries of our shared past. And don't forget to check the description below. We've included the research, statistics, and sources behind the claims in this video, so you can explore them yourself. Because Ethiopia isn't just where humanity began. It's where humanity keeps becoming.